Here we're going to tie a streamer fly called the Chubby Muffin. It's a Sculpin pattern. First thing we're going to do is just start our thread. We're going to tie in a large pair of pseudo eyes right near the front of the shank of the hook here. Just give a few X wraps around those eyes. Lock them down. And if you want, you can take a little bit of super glue here. Put a little dab of that right in the middle of the eyes there. That'll help lock them down. I usually do a few more wraps on top of that super glue. Keep those eyes from twisting. Then we're going to take our thread. We're just going to creep down the shank of the hook here all the way to basically where the bend starts. Get my hook a little straighter here. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie in some gold holographic Flashabou. I'm going to cut about half a dozen strands or so here. And I'm just going to let these hang off the back of the hook. And if you like, you can always double it over just like so, if you like a lot of flash on your fly. Then we're going to trim this so that it's about twice the length of the shank of the hook. Now what we're going to do is we're going to dub a little dubbing ball on the back of the shank here. I'm using just a SLF Whitlock's dubbing here, and I'm just going to use a Sculpin color. You can use the Sculpin olive, the Sculpin brown. Doesn't really matter too much. This is just going to basically be a dubbing ball here that's going to jam our rabbit strip from sliding forward on the shank of the hook, so it's more of a utilitarian dubbing ball rather than for looks. So don't worry too much what color you use. We're just going to dub a fairly generous sized dubbing ball. There we go. And we'll take our thread right in front of it. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of red Schlappen. We're going to stroke all the fibers back here so that we expose the tip of the feather. We're just going to tie that feather in right there by the tip. Trim out the excess. We're going to creep our thread forward here a little bit. What we're going to do is just palmer this so that the fibers lay back. With each wrap I just kind of stroke the fibers back with my fingers. We want a nice dense collar of Schlappen. Once I get most of the way to the eyes here, I'm going to stop. I'm going to capture this Schlappen here with my thread. I can trim it out of here. Now what we're going to do is just wrap back a little bit on this Schlappen here. That'll help force it back, make it lay down. There we go. Now the next thing to do is tie in the gills. For that I'm going to use 2 natural pieces of India hen back. And I'm just going to tie each of these in on each side here, and I'm going to strip off some of the fibers, only exposing about 3/4 of an inch of that feather. And I'm going to try to do the same exact thing on the other feather, trying to make them a matched pair. What I'm going to do is just tie these in so that they splay away from the fly. It'll look kind of like ears. You got to do this very carefully so that the feather doesn't roll on you. It takes a little bit of working. Since the quills are round, they like to roll on you. There we go. You can see there how it's splaying away from the fly. Do the same thing here on the far side. You can lock those fibers down. Now the next thing to do is to tie in our rabbit strip. What I'm going to use here is a Grizzly rabbit strip in a magnum size. And we're going to pierce this rabbit strip with the hook. And I want this rabbit strip to hang back about the length of the Flashabou that we tied in. This rabbit strip's about 3 inches long or so. So what I'm going to do is just pierce that rabbit strip right in the middle of the shank of the hook. Or pierce it with the hook right in the middle of the rabbit strip. I'm going to slide it up the shank. I'll put my fly back in the vise here. And that dubbing ball is basically going to act as a wedge to keep that rabbit strip from sliding any farther forward than we want it to. Then I'm just going to take that rabbit strip forward here. I'm going to pull it tight right up against that dubbing ball we had in the back. I'm going to capture that rabbit strip. Just a couple tight wraps. There's going to be a little extra, so all we're going to do is just get in there and trim out the extra. Lock the rest of it down. So now we're ready for the head of the fly. What we're going to do is we're going to make a nice big wide dubbing loop here. We're going to take our thread forward. What I like to do too for this step is I'm going to take some dubbing wax. What I'm actually going to do is use this dubbing wax to help get my material to stick. So just apply a little bit of that wax to my thread. You'll see why we do that here in a second. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some yellow craft fur, and I'm going to cut this in sections. I'm going to cut them into 1-inch sections. I'm going to lay them out here on my table. It takes a little bit of time here to do this. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this craft fur that I've cut in little 1-inch pieces. I'm going to load it into my dubbing loop very carefully. You can also use a drill with some wire. That's actually how Nick Granado does it when he actually ties. I'm just going to do a quick dubbing loop here. Easiest way is actually probably to use that drill technique. Basically make your own dubbing brush with it. Once I've got it all spun in my dubbing loop here, I'm just going to spread it all out, make sure it's even, and then I can just go ahead and spin my dubbing loop. Got a little material there trapped at the top. It's not a big deal. I can just trim it out of here. See if I can pull some of it out. Once I've got the dubbing loop formed here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get out my dubbing brush. I'm just going to brush all these fibers. This will do is it'll pull out those fibers, make them stand up. Now what I'm going to do is just take this dubbing here, with each wrap, I'm just going to kind of palmer everything back. Go around these eyes. Tell you what, I've got a little bit left, so what I'm going to do is just give it another wrap right behind these eyes. Give it a nice wide profile. One more, there we go. And I should be able to go around these eyes. And you can capture it, trim out the excess. Go ahead and whip finish, clean everything up front here. If you want, you can kind of brush the head here, get all those fibers to stand up. What we want to do here when we trim this fly, so I'm going to trim the bottom flush. And then we'll trim around the eyes. Let those eyes poke through. And you can really just trim it to whatever sculpin kind of shape you like and you prefer. I like this nice wide, big, bulky profile, and I usually use leave the kind of back end of it here by that Schlappen. I usually leave that all untrimmed, so it gives you a nice big nasty profile. It's going to push some water as you strip it. But a great little sculpin pattern, nice and heavy. Nice and big, pushes water. Great for big brown trout. And you can get all the materials for this fly at intheriffle.com. This fly naturally will actually ride more like that, upside down as you strip it. And what you can do as well is you can take colored markers, if you so desire, and you can actually color up all this craft fur to the colors that you like. You can take a black marker or a brown marker here, and you can give it kind of a sculpin-y kind of look. You put brown stripes in it. You can even color the whole thing. Usually I think Nick actually colors the entire fly with like goldish brown markers and yellowish orange markers. I've got just a brown marker here that I'm just kind of modeling it up with. You can just use Sharpies for this. You can also use art markers. This kind of gives it a semi-translucent kind of look, but still has that bright yellow underneath. When the fly gets wet, it kind of shines through. There you go, kind of turned it into a nasty sculpin-y brown color for you. But great little fly, a lot of fun to tie. If I was to tie more than one of these, I'd probably make the dubbing brushes with my drill and some just brassy wire. Basically just trap the material in the brassy wire and spin it with your drill. A lot easier than doing the dubbing loop like I did, but for one fly I just quickly do a dubbing loop. And like I said, you can get all the materials at intheriffle.com.